the businesses that you see, what could you give us an idea what the ranges are relative to revenues? I mean, is it like 100,000 to a million to five, 5 to 20, or what does it look like for you these days?
I mean, most of the businesses that I deal with, revenue-wise, are dealing anywhere from 1 million to about 8 or 10 million in
See,
revenue. Um, I mean, I see some that are doing less than that. I can't, oftentimes I can't really help them. If they're too small, it's just not economically feasible for me to help, for me to work with them. Sometimes I can refer them out. But other times, if their books and records are a mess and they're not showing a profit and the business is very small, um, and then I don't even like referring it out because it's just not a good use of somebody's time. So at that point, I just kind of tell them, like, there are things they can do. They can put it on Craigslist. They can, you know,
yeah,
there are things they can do, but
yeah.
yeah.
And how important are internal systems relative to developing the profitability of the business and thus the valuation?
Well, again, that goes back to your risk factors. So if they don't really have systems in place, they don't really have any um, policies and procedures, and the business is very owner centric. The owner is the one making all the decisions. The owner is the one doing all the business development. The owner, you know, you're looking at what is the transferable value. When the owner walks out the door, if everything walks out the door with him, then your transferable value is physical assets that may have been left on the shop floor or whatever, depending on the type of business. So yeah, I think that having systems in place, having policies and procedures, having employees that engage with the customers so that the owner is not the only person who has contact with the clients is really important. And again, that's why typically, when you're talking about business value, you're talking about a range of multiples, like, 1 to 1.5, or something selling in a 2 to 3, a multiple of 2 to 3. Well, what determines whether it's a 2 or whether it's a 3? And some of those factors that you're talking about, again, it goes back to the risk. So the higher the risk, going to slide down to the lower side of the scale, sometimes even below. I mean, we might say a business generally would sell for like a 2 to 3 multiple, but in some instances, it might sell for, 1.5 because of all of the risk involved. So,
And in terms of portrayal of those issues, do you sometimes find yourself saying, well, if you would put in place whatever it is, whatever system that might make the most sense here relative to driving revenue, sales, profitability, valuation, whatever it might be, do you ever find yourself saying, well, if you did this and we waited 3 months or 6 months until you had this in place and you could begin to show incremental profitability, does that ever make sense for you in this environment right now?
it does. The question is not, does it make sense for me though? The question is, does it make sense to the seller?
Correct.
And so some sellers are willing to make some changes, to put in a little bit of effort to try and put some things in place. A lot of sellers are just like, I'm just done.
Yeah, they're
So,
done.
I'm just done.
Yeah,
So just
yeah,
sell it for what you can sell it for and get me out of here because I'm done.
yeah.
So it really depends on the seller.
Gotcha. Okay.
And some are open to it and some just are not.
The